Nomi Bar-Yaacov is a leading international lawyer, arbitrator and mediator with a career spanning 3 decades in conflict management and peace negotiations. She sat down with DW's Birgit Maas to talk about this ceasefire and what could be next.
I think it's a very, very tricky ceasefire agreement in 3 stages. It must hold. I think the stakes are very, very high. I think that the first stage, which is 42 days, in which 33 hostages will be released, will definitely hold. It may not hold easily, but I think that the pressure will be immense to get the 33 hostages back. The pressure in Israel and the pressure from President-elect Donald Trump. I am less optimistic. I'd like to be cautiously optimistic about phases 2 and 3. I think it will take a huge amount of pressure, more so than we have seen, in order to get the deal signed by President Trump. So hopeful, but very, very cautious. I think there will plenty of opportunity for breaches, and I think there will be breaches on many fronts in the first stage too. But there is a very good monitoring mechanism, monitoring, verification, compliance that the Qataris and the Egyptians and the US have established, and they'll be based in Cairo, and much will depend on that operation, and of course on the will of the people and the public pressure, both in the Arab world on Hamas and inside Israel on the government. We're working on ensuring that Gaza will be run in a way that it will hold, because most of Gaza has been destroyed. More than 80% of the buildings in northern Gaza have been destroyed. The vast majority of the 2.3 million population has been displaced. The death toll is sky high. The known death toll is 47,000. However, there are many bodies under the rubble. And the wounded, and seriously wounded, and small babies, children, well over 100,000. Emergency, there's a need for over 40,000 to get emergency medical care. The hospitals have all been destroyed. And humanitarian aid is clearly a priority, very clearly a priority, the first priority. And 600 trucks are supposed to be getting in under the ceasefire agreement. But there's a big question about how will they get in, because at the moment they are all being looted as they try to get in, and who will secure it. It's the fine-tuned details. How will the Palestinian population move back to the north? That's a huge question. Who is going to ensure that none of the armed groups, including Hamas and including Palestinian Islamic Jihad and others, will be, among those moving back? And long term, which is sort of my main area, so that unless the end goal is crystal clear, there will be a resumption of fighting. And the long goal has to be 2 states, a Palestinian sovereign state, contiguous, so that's West Bank and Gaza, and an Israeli sovereign state based on the 67 lines. There could be very minor adjustment, but on a 1-to-1 ratio, so that the territory is, the Palestinians don't get less territory than they were allocated. And there is a huge amount of work to be done in order to ensure that everything is in place, especially since the current Israeli government has passed a law in the Knesset that they're against the Palestinian state. That clearly will have to change. Of course, there'll have to be normalization between Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the Arab world as a result, but the Palestinian state has to materialize, and the work that I'm doing with various back-channel groups is vital for the success of this of the ceasefire, because without an end goal, we know for sure that there'll be a resumption for fighting. We know that from experience. We've seen it in many places.
So there's really like a legacy of trauma and of hatred. How can a reconciliation be brought about?
First and foremost, there needs to be a recognition of the other as human. There needs to be a recognition of the narrative of the other, of the rights of the other. Many Israelis are taught that the West Bank and Gaza are part of Israel, especially the youth, those born after 67, don't know that the West Bank and Gaza are Palestinian, is occupied, belligerent occupation under international law. It's occupied territory. And the Palestinians have also been taught to hate Israel, and Hamas wanted to wipe Israel off the map. And their goal was to eradicate Israel on the 7th of October, and they made that very clear. And so there has to be a recognition, and they have to be taught that Palestine, the West Bank and Gaza, under the 67 lines, is Palestinian territory, and Israel within the Green Line is Israeli territory. I think that is fundamental. I just think there's ignorance about fact, and moving into the age of the unknown in terms of fake news and fake facts, this is very dangerous. And there has to be a lot of international effort to ensure that this is crystal clear, that the UN and other international organizations need to speak very clearly about both Israel's right to live securely within the 67 borders and the Palestinians' right to live securely and have their own sovereign state within the 67 borders. And that is that is fundamental. And that beyond that, of course, there's the trauma on both sides. The attacks of 7th October were horrific, and the response was horrific. So there needs to be a recognition that this cannot happen again. And it cannot happen again with a change of governments on both sides. And I think there will be elections in Israel eventually, and there definitely will be elections in Palestine. But the work needs to commence now. Well, it should have commenced a long time ago. The other issues, the role of communities is very important. So it's not just a bottom up, it's not just a top down, it's definitely a bottom up. The people want peace. They just don't know how to get there. And that's where they need help. They are not born with hatred. And they need to overcome the hatred and the trauma by realizing that there's a better future. And the Gazans need to be able to live and breathe, so beyond the humanitarian aid and everything, and Israel needs to take responsibility for what they've done to civilians in Gaza. And there needs to be a process whereby the Gazans will get jobs. Yeah, the governance of Gaza, of course, as we discussed, is very important, but one needs to think about all these children that have seen terrible things. How are they going to overcome it? So beyond the psychological care, as we discussed, and the trauma healing, and there's a lot of expertise in trauma healing, there need to be really to move along all of those different paths. First and foremost, the Gazans need to be able to live and breathe, and that getting humanitarian aid into Gaza is very important, and getting the Israelis to realize what they did to the Gazan people, not those who attacked them on the 7th of October, is also very important. But the whole mindset, both in Israel and in Palestine, needs to change, and the Israeli government's attitude towards the Palestinians needs to change. And that will take both President Trump forcing Netanyahu's hand and a lot of serious education, which can happen on social media. So I'm not talking about education only in schools. And that's absolutely vital.
So what do you think will be the change after the new administration in the US is taking office? Do you have hope that they can enhance the peace in the region?
Well, that's an excellent question. I think that they can. I think that President Trump is rather ignorant about the facts and what is important to him is to get a Nobel Peace Prize, because he feels that President Obama got a Peace Prize for rhetoric, not for actions, and he would like to get it for actions. And if his goal is to get money, so that's the Saudi deal, you know, business, and to get a peace Nobel, then he really needs to listen to those in the know who are working tirelessly, and no one knows who President Trump will listen to. From the appointments that he made, it's not looking fantastic, but you can see that his special envoy to the Middle East delivered a very clear message to Prime Minister Netanyahu. I don't care, basically, he said to him, about your red lines. You need to sign the dotted line. And Netanyahu did so. So if that continues, then that will be very important. You know, he said all hell will break loose, but all hell can break loose also if Israel doesn't abide by its part. He does not want Israel to return to war. The whole Middle East is craving stability. Lebanon has managed to get rid of, or is about to, of Hezbollah's military wing. Hamas's military wing is virtually being destroyed. There's Adin al-Qassam. President Assad is out. Iran has not been this weak for many decades. So there is a real chance for stability and peace. And there are a lot of balls in the air. But China's had a constructive role in mediation between Fatah and Hamas. That, of course, will be key to the governorship of Gaza and to reaching stability in Palestine and the region. The Palestinians themselves need to do some healing and accounting, and impunity must end on both sides.
And what gives you hope for the region?
Humanity. I believe in humanity, and I believe that the trajectory will change. I'm seeing some good, very, very, very positive moves. I think the fact that President Trump has exercised the leverage that the Biden administration failed to do and has basically dictated that war must end in Gaza. Biden dictated this war must end in Lebanon. He did exercise the leverage there for that to be signed. And that gives me hope. I think the region is tired of war, and I think the Middle East craves stability and prosperity. So even if some of the Arab states don't agree on the politics necessarily, they all agree that they want to make money, and they all agree that the only way to do it is through the establishment of a Palestinian state and normalization and justice. And justice is going to be a long, long, long road, but it's part of the process. In the way that also Germany acknowledged the horrors of the Holocaust and still pays reparations, there will have to be a very serious accountability process and recognition. And it's only with recognition of the horrors that have been done on both sides that we can move forward.